All right, let's now discuss the developments here in the Gulf region after Iran's President Massoud Pezeshkian apologized to regional countries for attacking them and said that he'd ordered the armed forces to stop attacking nations who stay out of the conflicts. Joining us to discuss this is Banndar Saif, who's a professor at Kuwait University and an associate fellow at Chatham House. Abdullah Aziz Ghashian is a senior non-resident fellow at the Gulf International Forum in Riyadh. Abdullah Babood is in Muscat, Oman's capital. He's the chair of the State of Qatar for Islamic Area Studies at Waseda University. And joining me here in the studio in Doha is Abdullah Banndar Etaibi. He's an assistant professor in international affairs at Qatar University. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us on Al Jazeera. Abdullah Banndar, if I can start with you here in Doha. The Iranian president's message, how is it being received here in Qatar, particularly after missiles and drones were intercepted following that message? What do Qatari authorities make of this?
Well, first of all, we could tell it's an apology. It's a very conditional apology. He's saying that they wouldn't attack as long as there's the airspace and from the Gulf countries is not being used by the U.S. against Iran. But the question comes is whether the airspace was ever used against Iran before Iran attacks the GCC countries.
It's not the case that the air bases were used here.
No. There was no use. Right. And it's a problem with the way how the Iranians are trying to frame it. They're trying to frame it, they are targeting the American interest. However, they are targeting critical infrastructure in the Gulf countries. We see they are attacking airports, ports, energy as well. They're trying to weaponize everything they can have. We look at the Strait of Hormuz, the condition of Strait of Hormuz now. It's quite problematic for the world and for the global security and the global energy security. Therefore, coming back to your question, yes, it's being seen with caution here in the Gulf region, that's for sure. And they can't actually build their own opinion regarding Iran based on apology. There should be some critical and real behavior on the ground.
All right. Abdullah Aziz Ghashian in Riyadh, what's your understanding of the Iranian president's message here? And is it a question of them not attacking the infrastructure, energy infrastructure in the region anymore, but continuing to attack U.S. assets in the region? Was it clear to you what exactly they would stop targeting?
No, it's not really clear what they will stop targeting. And I think it's not even clear that they will actually not stop targeting, period. I think, in my opinion, there is, I think people will take these statements and this apology with a great pinch of salt. They are very dubious about this. And I think this is one thing that maybe many in the Gulf have been used to. I think we've seen this kind of duality of communication, that one second that we are brothers, we don't want to do this, and then all of a sudden they're alongside these apologies are kind of strapped to missiles and drones. So what I would want to say here is I would like to perhaps say a few words and try to contextualize this right now. There have been, in my opinion, very interesting signals coming out. I mean, it was either yesterday or the day before yesterday that the Iranian ambassador in Saudi stated that he appreciates that Saudi Arabia did not allow the United States to use its airspace in this issue. Yet they were still having attacks. The attacks from Iran still continued. And in addition to, I think, Mr. Etaibi, the fact that we were always communicating the fact that none of these bases were ever used. And so here, in my opinion, I think this is some sort of extending, trying to keep the door open, trying to keep their hands extended and trying to keep the door open for some sort of diplomacy to take place. There is another aspect here that I think the GCC statements and even some of...
Just Abdullah Ghashian, we'll get into all of those aspects because there's indeed a lot to talk about. I just want to get Banndar Saif's initial reaction first to the Iranian president's comments that the attacks would stop. And do you believe that what he says carries weight? Because we did see in the aftermath of that announcement, the missiles still being intercepted in many parts of the region.
Actions speak louder than words. And these are the ones that I'll be looking for in the next few hours to see how clear is this cascading down to the command structure. Remember, before the death of Khamenei, there has been a decentralized effort across the Iranian apparatus to make sure that the war effort continues despite the loss of leadership, which they've lost many of them. Now, the apology is welcome. It's overdue. We would have hoped that there was no apology because we didn't want the attacks to begin with. But we need to also understand and link it up to another statement that came right after the president's statement, which was by the Chatham al-Anbiya headquarters, which is an IRGC affiliate. And they said that they would abide by the president's remarks by not attacking the Gulf. But they also said that the US interests and bases will continue to be attacked. So I can't reconcile the two statements together.
Okay.
And that needs to be also taken into account.
Interesting. Abdullah, Babood, your thoughts. When Iran's president apologizes to neighboring countries while the military continues its attacks, what signal does that send about who truly controls Iranian policy today?
Well, I think the announcement itself is a welcomed announcement. It will be welcomed by the government and the people from the Gulf Cooperation Council states that have been subjected to Iranian attack, despite the fact that they have always declared that they will not allow their airspace or the bases to be used against attacks on Iran. And the attacks themselves were shocking because the Gulf states have never wanted to enter into this. This is not their war. And of course, they don't want to be entangled in this. So I think the message itself is going to be welcomed. But I think, as my colleagues have been saying, it will be welcomed with some skepticism and caution because, of the nature of decision-making, of course, because of the Iranian, normally it's foreign policy, but also because of the lack of leadership at the moment and the way that they have decentralized the decision making.
And
so
on that,
let's hope that.
Yeah. On that nature of Iranian decision making, as you say, Abdullah Babood, I want to show you now a statement that's been released by the Iranian military about this. The highest command of the Iranian armed forces has put out a statement after the address from President Pezeshkian saying that the attacks on regional countries will be halted. Well, in this statement, they say that following the statements of the respected president, the armed forces once again declare that they respect the interests and national sovereignty of neighboring countries and up to now have not committed any aggression against them. However, if previous offensive actions continue, all military bases and interests of criminal America and the fake Zionist regime on land, sea and space in the region will be considered primary targets and will come under crushing and severe strikes by the powerful armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So, Abdullah Etaibi, as you see there seems to be a disconnect between what the leadership in Tehran is saying and what these armed forces are executing on the ground. How concerning is that to countries in the region that there is no, if there was to be dialogue, that there is no faithful or direct interlocutor right now?
Well, it's very worrying to look at the president and also even the foreign minister being just being an audience and just watching, like us, all the events unfolding here in the region. It's very important to mention that it's clear that the armed forces, the IRGC, they are acting and ruining the whole thing for the political side in Iran. They don't actually leave a space for diplomacy and for a way to return to the region, because at the end of the day, you can't actually change the geography. So we all need to find a way to de-escalate this matter and also to sit down and just talk about differences, which is going to be the good interest of the people of the region and also for the world. Especially if we're talking about the Gulf states, they're trying to de-escalate the matter, but also defending their sovereignty, which has been actually crossed multiple times by Iran. And also the irony is, while the president was actually speaking today, the sirens went off in Doha.
Indeed.
So that was ironic, actually.
Abdul Aziz Al-Ghashian in Riyadh. So how does Saudi Arabia interpret this apparent disconnect between Iran's political leadership and its military decision-making? If there was to be dialogue between Riyadh and Tehran in the coming days or weeks, who would they be talking to?
Well, I don't know who they will be talking to, and no one knows. This is part of the fogginess of the situation. But what I would say is there are, I think, to expand upon what Mr. Etaibi was saying earlier. I think even after you read out that statement that you did, there is room to be even more worried, to be honest with you, because listening to some of these statements, clearly they are putting caveats at the very fact that that for what they will strike, or they're putting conditions for their restraint and not attacking Gulf states. And basically, they are saying, well, we will not attack Gulf states only if these airspaces and bases are not used against us. But they were never used. And at the same time, there seems to be another kind of shade of their discourse that's actually perpetuating this disinformation on us. It's making it seem like, no, there are these actually bases that are being used. So for me, it seems like a step forward and a step back at the same time.
Right.
So I think this is why there is this complete fogginess. And I mean, let alone knowing who to talk to later on. I think the very message of hearing in itself has so many caveats. So I think it's still very, very unclear what is even the essence of this message and how important this message actually is.
Okay, Badr, Saif, your thoughts. Are you as worried as Abdulaziz Al Ghashian? And does this make it harder for Gulf governments to assess Iran's intentions or trust the diplomatic messaging from Tehran?
Look, let me start by going internal within the Gulf. I think today the Gulf states must feel vindicated. Their position on the war so far has been wise. Their restraint is paying off, as we saw today from the apology. We want them now, or on the Iranian side, to build on this apology and to bring in a consolidated statement, perhaps, that then translates into coordinated action against attacking the Gulf states. I think bringing both the military and the civil command together in one message would be more reassuring to our side. And let's not forget, Folly, the moving variables in all of this.
Right.
We didn't mention the U.S. and Israel. The U.S. and Israel started an illegal attack on Iran. And Iran took it on us, which was also improper and illegal. Now, we need to also see what kind of leadership transforms into Iran or morphs into Iran, because they've been, going after their leadership.
Right.
So
and when you hear the statement,
how long will this statement last?
Badr Al Saif, when you hear the most recent statement from President Trump, just in the last few minutes, he posted on Truth Social that he plans to expand this war and target areas and actors that were previously not targeted. How worrying is that for this region?
It's very worrying, but it also reinforces the need to continue what we're doing in the Gulf by staying out of it. As we've heard before from our colleagues on the call, this is not our war, and we need to maintain our diplomacy and I think go back to where we stood, where we stopped with Omani mediation. It needs to be coupled up with other countries joining the Omanis, pushing for a resolution to this chaos.
Abdullah, Babood, how long can Gulf states stay out of this? I mean, if they cannot fully trust who controls Iran's military actors today during wartime, how much trust can they be in the future for diplomacy with Tehran?
Well, I don't think we have any choice but to play diplomacy. The Gulf states have always wanted to stay out of conflict. As you know, there has been a rapprochement between some of the Gulf states and Iran, or all of them. They established good relationship, a cooperative relationship. There was a dialogue. The Gulf states are focusing on their internal domestic economy. They're trying to build their, diversify their economies. They have their own visions, and they want to focus on that, and they want to work with everyone. So the whole war, which is, of course, not wanted by the Gulf states, and they have been trying to avoid it, and it's illegal in our opinion, was not welcome. And also the attacks from Iran on the Gulf states, that is actually shocking. And the damage that these attacks are going to make are going to be with us for a long time. This area of tranquility, stability, and so on is now shocked. For not only residents, but also for investors, local, international investors, and tourists. So we need to work hard to ensure that the situation becomes normal and to stop these attacks of course, first of all, on the Gulf states, and secondly, to stop this war, because we have no option but to do that.
Abdullah Etaibi, once this conflict eventually ends, what will Iran's relationship with the Gulf region look like?
It will be very interesting to look at it, because I will finish where Dr. Abdullah ended. He said that the effect and the consequences already taken place in so many levels. We have to look at the political side and the state-to-state relationships in the region, because at the end of the day, geography, you can't change it. So states need to deal with each other. We have to look at what's going to come out of this war, if the regime will survive it, and who is going to lead Iran as well. Also economically, because the global market is currently taking a big punch actually by the prices and supply. When we talk about Qatar energy halting the production, we talk about targets to Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. So it will be very, very interesting to look at the relationship between Iran and its neighbors.
Abdullah Ghashian, finally, your thoughts, the future of Gulf-Iran relations. Do you think that the mistrust will deepen, or could shared fears of instability in this region push both sides to dialogue?
Well, I mean, I'm currently very depressed. I wish to share my depression with everyone else and my depressing analysis, I would say. But, I would say the following. I think we have entered into a post-rapprochement era, and I've said this because I think the Gulf states have really, and especially Saudi, have invested an immense amount of energy, exactly because of what Dr. Abdullah Babood was saying, that we were trying to really build, our economy, but we actually invested a great deal of effort and energy towards rapprochement with Iran. So I think there's a genuine disappointment and anger at the fact that this energy was invested in something that didn't work, only for us to be attacked by it. However, I would say I don't see the cutting of relations happening. I think there will be some sort of dialogue in the future. And actually, there are reports that there is already dialogue in the future. Moreover, the GCC states have actually also seemed to have indicated that they are not willing to use military offensive measures. So there is this restraint. And as Dr. Badr Saif was saying, that restraint is actually in our favor. It's just we need to nurture it. And I think the post-era really has to show from Iran. The ball is in the Iranians' court to show that, listen, your restraint is something we appreciate, but I think if we treat these statements very dubiously now, the diplomacy will be very dubious in the future as well. But I think it will continue somehow.
All right, Banndar, Saif, do you share that optimism that diplomacy between Iran and the Gulf countries will continue in the future?
We have no other option, Folly. This is what we need to work on. And we are at a very historic time. We're at the cusp of change in Iran. Iran is now under a new leadership. They're reassessing their options. They've seen that their 4-decade-plus project in the region when it comes to their foreign policy choices is unraveling, and that there needs to be a reckoning that serves their people first and hopefully serves the region as well. The Gulf states extend their arms for that vision. I think we need to work on something that's connected to one another, and we need to invest in each other's abilities. Only then will we be able to weather the storm. This is our region. There is no escape from working together. We shouldn't let outside actors dictate the agenda of the Middle East.
All right. Professor Abdullah Babood, in Oman, your thoughts finally. Are you optimistic as well that relations with Iran could get back on track in the future?
Well, as I said, and my colleagues have said, the Gulf states have invested a lot of energy and efforts to reconcile and to make rapprochement with Iran. Iran is an important regional country. This is our region. We can only have stability and security if we cooperate together. The Gulf states have also tried very hard to avoid this war. And unfortunately, despite the diplomacy, the war happened. And the Gulf states became victims to this war. So I think in the future, we have to work with Iran. Iran is our neighbor. But at the same time, we have to take count of what has happened, because the attacks on the Gulf states are not going to be just brushed over. And I think we also have to work on, the United States to see that there is an end to this through negotiations, because war is not going to have an effect, and it doesn't help anybody. It only brings, as we have seen, more instability and more chaos in a region that is one of the most important regions in terms of energy production, but economic development and also connectivity. We need to make this region safe, and the United States have to help us in doing so and to stop these attacks as well, because that will also help the region to, or the conflict to subside and the region to get into the normal life and to have more cooperation between us.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for sharing your views with us. Thank you for your insight, Abdullah, Babood, Banndar Saif, Aziz Al Ghashian, and Abdullah Banndar Al Etaibi. Thank you so much for joining us on Al Jazeera.